right, good morning again. So today I actually wanted to do a video on something that I've had a lot of discussions about with people, and it seems to me that the common understanding of the way that large language models are set up these days is that they're unable to be creative. And people seem to think that creativity remains sort of one of the last bastions of human-only sort of capability. And I would like to go about to dispel that myth, because that's actually not the case. Large language models are absolutely able to be creative and create novel ideas. And I'm going to explain exactly how right now. So first, a little bit of background sort of about what being creative even means still. Because the way that the human brain goes about being creative actually does follow a kind of process, right? So typically, to come up with a new idea, you have to build upon existing sort of knowledge as it is. So, my shoe's untied, hold on a second. Oh dear. You know, I could start this video over again, or I could just see me tie my shoe. Whatever. Okay, so so how does the human brain go about doing creativity? So there are sort of two different things that happen there. One of them is called convergent thinking, and the other one is called divergent thinking, right? So an example of convergent thinking would be, let's say that you have three different items. You have a piece of wood, a rope, and a piece of metal. And then I would ask you to come up with ideas on how you can use these three items together to create something new, right? So you'd have to come up with the new ideas based on sort of those three existing things, right? And obviously those things could be anything. It doesn't have to be physical objects. They could be concepts as well, right? That you would mix together, right? And now the opposite of this, the opposite of convergent thinking, would be divergent thinking. So in this case, I would give you one thing, like here's this piece of wood. Tell me three things that you could make with the piece of wood, right? So you'd be diverging from one thing into three things. And again, this doesn't have to be physical things. This can be concepts as well too, right? So you can basically program again into your agent these thinking concepts and ask it to think in this way still. And this is where it gets interesting, because basically there's not really any limit to the amount of calls that you can make to the large language model, to the times that you can ask it this question. So this lends itself to an opportunity that I like to call brute force creativity, where basically you can just ask it to do this over and over and over again. And what you end up with is a very, very long list of ideas, right? Now, a lot of them will be repeating or redundant. So what you do is you filter the list so that it removes the repeated ideas, removes the redundant ideas. But ultimately, you'll get a huge list of ideas and concepts, or whatever it is, the specific thing that you're looking for. And many of these things are in fact novel, right? They are ideas that have not been thought of or expressed before. You know, people have this thinking that, like, oh, if it's not in the training data, it can't be said. It's not true, right? It absolutely can say new things, right? You know, it's the training data. It's not like a database, right? Where it can only fetch information from that exists in the database. That's not how it works, right? It's generative, right? It's synthetic, right? So I want to give you another example on how it can use a thinking framework in order to enhance sort of the abilities of a large language model in terms of being creative, right? So there is a model called the six hats thinking framework, right? And what this has been used for is as a management tool to organize meetings, to analyze and make decisions, right? So the hats go like this, right? There's a blue hat who's the control hat, who's to organize sort of the rest of the hats and introduce the topics that are up for discussion and sort of manage the process, right? Then you have the white hat. The white hat should bring in objective data-driven information. The black hat should look at things from a negative perspective, like a pessimist. The red hat should look at things from an emotional perspective. This one's a little bit weirder to synthesize still, but because the idea of the red hat is actually just sort of to take in the sort of gut feeling of people still, because you actually don't have to provide any reason for what you're feeling, right? You just say, yeah, I don't like it, it feels good, or it feels bad, or oh, I like it, it feels good, right? So the utility of this inside of a large language model remains questionable, but that being said, not necessarily entirely useless still, because again, because the large language model is trained on masses of data that is created by humans, it does sort of have some representative ability of how people think, right? So in any case, that's the red hat. Then the green hat is meant to be creative. So again, you would want your green hat to really be thinking of the divergent thinking or convergent thinking to try and be creative within that process. I think I'm missing a hat still. It's a yellow hat. I can't remember what the yellow hat does. Man with the yellow hat. He manages the monkey. No. Yeah, if you know that reference, good on you. But anyway, so the point is that this is another way that you can basically take this existing framework, program that into an agent, and then have it come up with sort of a more structured way of going about creative thinking, right? And in this case, it's related somewhat to decision making around a concept, but the way that it can sort of go about breaking things down, extrapolating, making the ideas more comprehensive, coming up with associated ideas and things that will support it, right? Now, this is really just tip of the iceberg. I mean, you could go and basically just go do some research and figure out like a full list of all of the different existing sort of thinking frameworks, whether it is sort of based around decision making or based around creativity. And again, if this is something that can be implemented for a person to follow or for a group of people to follow, then there's really nothing stopping us from programming an agent to do the same thing, right? So that's pretty much it. I mean, I wrapped that up pretty quick and had time to tie my shoes. So I really don't understand why people don't think that, AI can be creative still. My guess is that it's probably they don't really maybe understand sort of how deep you can go with something like a system prompt, right? I'd imagine that for the most part, I guess a lot of the people that I talk to, their sort of use of LLMs and stuff is pretty surface level. It would be either, something like taking what ChatGPT gives you, without much modification, or using some other sort of like SaaS product or tool where the team that releases the SaaS product has already done sort of like the prompt engineering behind the scenes, and they're just using that tool. Or, for the people that are actually doing their own prompt engineering, it's highly likely still that they are focused on some sort of a business outcome, and then not necessarily taking the time to think about how to make an agent be creative, because maybe it's just not high on their priority list, right? But just because you haven't done it or you haven't seen it doesn't mean it's possible. It's impossible still, right? And certainly I would not take sort of whatever your experience is using a tool like like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, just using those at the base level and being like, oh, these ideas are derivative. Yeah. Well, have you tried being creative with it? Yeah. You see what I did there? Alrighty. Cool. Okay, I guess we're gonna make this a quick one. So yeah, that about wraps it up. I think this is my last day here, so I'm gonna fly home tonight, and yeah, we'll see you all in the next one.